project, I created Marissa, which is a multimedia food tour that celebrates and educates about the Dominican community in Washington Heights and Inwood. It uses text photography, video, audio, and an interactive Google map to tell the story of the neighborhood. The tour is called Morir Soñando, which literally translates to die dreaming. It's a popular Dominican breakfast drink made out of orange juice and milk, and it's the first item on the food tour. It's the beginning of a series of ethnic food tours throughout New York City. Having grown up in New York, I've developed an interest in the ethnic food cultures that have always been all around me, and in the last few years I've taken this interest abroad. Every time I travel to different countries or cities, I keep travel blogs that I send to family and friends about the food and the history. I view ethnic food as a lens to so much more. When you're eating somewhere that isn't your own, you're taking in the culture, the history, and the community. You're not just eating. Also, in the past few years, I've worked for several food websites, and in last September, I started a Julia Child food writing fellowship with 2 local print and digital magazines called Edible Manhattan and Edible Brooklyn. Since I started working with these magazines, I've learned, which we learned in some of the earlier presentations, that we have a cultural obsession with food media, and we really want to look at food and learn about food through media. So in a way, I see that I can take advantage of this to educate about food cultures and good food. I chose to focus my first tour on Washington Heights and Inwood because of the concentration of the Dominican community. Dominicans represent the largest immigrant group in all of New York City, and I see that their food is underrepresented as compared to Mexican and Puerto Rican food. There are 100,000 Dominicans living in Washington Heights and Inwood. The neighborhood in dark red in the top left corner is Washington Heights and Inwood, and Washington Heights runs from about 155th to Dyckman Street on the west side of Manhattan, and then just north of that is Inwood, from Dyckman all the way to the northern tip of Manhattan. I've also been interested in Hispanic and Latino food culture since starting at NYU, and last year I worked at a high school in East Harlem, also known as El Barrio. I worked on a nutrition program with students, and I became interested in the food in the neighborhood. I took my interest in food there back to school and wrote one paper on immigration and acculturation and Hispanic immigrants in East Harlem, and I also created a similar food tour of the Puerto Rican food in East Harlem on a much smaller scale with just text. So this is the tour. It includes 9 stops, and each of them I chose based on their historical and cultural significance. The first stop is Malecon, which is a restaurant in Washington Heights, and I'm going to show a brief video where I sat down with the owner, Pablo Gomez. Washington Heights, the epicenter of Dominican culture for New York and home to some of the best Dominican food the city has to offer. At Malecon, Pablo Gomez has been sharing his family's cooking with the neighborhood for 28 years. Today, he shares his version of cuatro golpes, a traditional breakfast that's based around a hearty plate of mashed boiled plantains called mango.
Well, in the Dominican Republic, it was invented by farmers. Farmers needed big, heavy meal before they go out there to the mountains and, work their land. So plantains is largely available in the Dominican Republic, like yuca is, but something about plantains, we love plantains a lot of ways. We like it fried, sweet, green, boiled, you name it. And cuatro golpes, the 4 hits, is actually 4 ingredients that you add in mango, the mashed plantains, to combine it.
He goes on to talk about the 4 ingredients, which are salami, sausage, eggs, and cheese that are all deep fried and then added to the plate. It's a nice hearty breakfast. The second stop is United Palace. It's a theater, a cultural arts center, and sort of a community meeting space. It's the 3rd largest theater in Manhattan after Madison Square Garden and Radio City. The 3rd stop is Esmeralda Bakery, and these are guava pastries. That's flaky puff pastry that are stuffed with guava paste, and you can get them with or without cheese. And it's a tiny corner bakery that also sells Dominican cake called Biscocho Dominicano, and my favorite item of the tour, which is avena. It's an oatmeal drink. The 4th stop is Tu País Supermarket. I chose to include a supermarket so that you could really see people in their everyday lives. It's very important to include a supermarket in any food tour. this supermarket sells some items that you wouldn't see at a downtown or a non-Dominican supermarket, like certain fruits like cactus and sugarcane, and certain cuts of meat like beef intestines, which are really important for a dish called mondongo. Next is a series of food carts. The street food culture in Washington Heights is incredible. There are people selling on the streets all day, every day, no matter what the weather is. And I chose 2 stops to include on the tour. The first is chicharrones, which are it's fried pork rinds, and the second is habichuelas con dulce, which is a sweet red bean soup. The next is Jeffrey's Hook Lighthouse. It's the only lighthouse in all of Manhattan, and it's right under the George Washington Bridge. Then Dykeman Farmhouse, a farmhouse that was built in 1784 and is now the only farmhouse in Manhattan, and it's open as a museum and kind of as a reminder that there is a rich agricultural history in Upper Manhattan. 8th is Elvina. It's a down-home diner, and this is where you get a big hearty Dominican lunch. They specialize in seafood, but they also have all the traditional sides like plantains in 10 different ways, and rice and beans. And then the tour ends at Bizcocho de Colores, which is a bakery run by a woman named Daisy LeBron, who's been baking tres leches since she came to the United States from the Dominican Republic in 1982. There's 2 versions of the site. There's a desktop and a mobile version. This is what the desktop version looks like, including text, photography, video, and this map on the top opens up to an interactive Google map, and you could click on any location and read about the location and watch videos and see photographs of the location. The mobile version is a little bit different. It's easier to take on the road with you. It includes a map it function that opens your phone's version of Google Maps to take you from where you are to the next location on the tour. And it also includes audio voiceovers that you could listen to about the history on the go. Once I made it live on Edible Manhattan, I really wanted to share it in as many places as possible. So I built versions of the food tour on Huffington Post, on Uptown Collective, which is an Uptown magazine and website, and on BuzzFeed. I also did a lot of email outreach and social media outreach to famous people who were born in Washington Heights or famous Dominicans. Next, I'd like to expand the series to several other locations in Manhattan and Brooklyn. I'd like to start with my Puerto Rican food tour of East Harlem and create the multimedia component there. And I'd also like to expand it to Koreatown and the Senegalese communities in Harlem. And I'd like to move on to Brooklyn with Little Mexico, the Russian community in Brighton Beach, and Little Poland in Greenpoint. You can all visit the tour on ediblemanhattan.com, and I hope you all go and eat some Dominican food. Thank you.